And actually, I would argue that a lot of people, for example, the January 6th insurrectionists, they saw themselves as as very much like the patriots of 1776. And in many ways, they're right. But we don't live 250 years ago. We have a country that has changed in the way it views slavery, in the way it views ethnicity, in the way it views justice. And so I think it's important to remember that we don't need to copy what happened 250 years ago. But we can make use of the system that was created in order to create the more fair and just society that the founders clearly had in mind when they created the Constitution. So I think history is a really useful tool in understanding how did a problem get started? What was the beginning of it? Because if you're going to solve a problem, you really have to go back to the beginning. You have to deal not with the symptom, but with the cause. And the cause of so many of our issues really began at this critical time when our nation began.
Speaking about events of today, so like there is a political climate that is there in today's world, and how do you ensure this political climate does not influence your work? How do you know, how do you separate science, ideology, and keep a check on biases, you know?
Well, that's a hard task, and the best thing that I've learned to do as a journalist and an author is to be aware of my own prejudices, to be aware of my own story. So, in a way, taking this childhood myth, I mean, this is the story I was raised with, and asking questions and diving into it and learning why is it that I was taught this way. To me, that is essential to be able to understand the world in which I live. So I think there's always bias. I don't think anybody is unbiased, but the best that I can do is to be clear and honest about my biases. Uh, I'm a man who was raised in the South at a time when prejudice was much more open and widespread than it is today. And so I have to be aware of that bias when I'm writing about African Americans. It's critical. And I also can't be afraid to dive into the archives and come back up with something that might make people uncomfortable. Uh, to me, it just makes a story more interesting if it's more accurate. If I can actually show that this person actually said this. Thomas Jefferson actually said that Norfolk must be destroyed.